right, everybody, welcome back to Get in the Garage.
We're the music podcast.
For music lovers. This week, our new album review is an album that was released last week, I believe. It is the 9th studio album by the band Portugal the Man. It is called Chris Black Changed My Life. This album was produced primarily by Jeff Basker and Asa Taccone, who are both music guys who are in a bunch of other things. Asa is in a band called Electric Guess. Jeff Basker has worked with Kanye West, Bruno Mars, Mark Ronson, etc., etc., etc. This album is named after Chris Black, who was a friend of the band and their like unofficial hype man, master of ceremonies. He died in 2019. Their previous album was released in 2017. That album was called Woodstock. It featured the hit song Feel It Still, which was a sleeper hit that went into the top 10. This is their first album in 6 years then, and it is 11 tracks and 34 minutes long. Not a band I really knew beyond that song and maybe like a couple others that I like checked out. What did you guys think about this album?
Yeah, for me, Portugal the Man is another one of those bands, too, where it's like I knew the hits, but I never really expanded in the discography. This is their 9th studio album, which I was kind of surprised to find. I wouldn't, consider myself a Portugal the Man fan. I like this record. I enjoyed it. It was met with some like harsh criticisms and reviews and stuff. It seems like a lot of reviewers didn't really enjoy the record that much. Maybe it's just that sort of fresh ears. I don't really know their past discography, which brought me to the place where I did enjoy this record, but I liked it.
This record was like overall not a terrible listen. I really enjoyed some of the things on it. It reminded me of a bit of like Gnarls Barkley, and a lot of like Unknown Mortal Orchestra's first, or actually their second album too. It reminded me a lot of like the production values and like melodic things on those two records. So I was getting a lot of those vibes. It also reminded me a lot of like what I love about the band like Gorillaz. In a different way, who also released an album this year that I actually did not like a lot, and this kind of seemed like an album that was more geared towards things like that, and I really enjoyed those aspects of it. Some of the middle album lost me a little bit, and it's kind of like ballady and kind of gets a little washed out, but strong pickup at the end and very strong intro on the record. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
So you mentioned Gnarls Barkley, and I think you're right on. This reminded me of the group Broken Bells, which is like Gnarls Barkley, another Brian Burton Danger Mouse group. It is kind of that retro soul, almost like 60s, like almost like that bubblegum pop thing mixed with current hip hop influence pop music. This band is as of now, I believe it's a 5-piece band. Going into this album, it was a 6-piece band. If you look at the track listing, it's kind of like a studio project overseen by the lead vocalist and Jeff Basker, and like half the band kind of plays on like 2 or 3 tracks, but it sounds like a full band. It reminded me a lot of like a new age kind of Partridge Family kind of music. There's a lot of transistor organ throughout this album. There's a lot of kind of like Leslie guitar leads. There's a lot of acoustic strumming. There's some like Motown drum sample stuff. Homer Steinweiss from the Dap Kings plays drums all over this, who is like known for the Back to Black album by Amy Winehouse. So it has that 60s retro thing, that like 2020s futuristic thing. This band's from Wasilla, Alaska / Portland, Oregon. So this is like very standard definition of hipstery kind of like pop music. Because it's a band, but nothing on it really rocks. There's some big moments, there's some triumphant moments, there's some fuzz guitar and stuff like that, but it's pretty like it's kind of made for radio and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like that indie pop thing.
Yeah, right.
The way I would describe like this style of music, and this is an out of date term for this, but this is like anything that can land in like an iPhone commercial, or like
exactly.
an iPod commercial back in the day.
Yeah.
Things like Group Love too, like that band that was in it, kind of like reminds me of that. A lot of like sounded like looping kind of drums, so like you can kind of tell, like you said, it's like a band, but it's also like a studio thing, and like that was evident with like a lot of that loopy drum kind of thing going on a lot of the songs. Did you guys think the features added to this record? Because I really liked every
Yes.
song that had a feature, and I thought it really elevated it.
Those are some of my favorite songs.
Yeah, same here. Especially the Black Thought feature in
course.
in Thunderdome, which was great because it was
Yeah.
kind of like he was kind of put through what sounded sort of like an intercommy megaphone kind of
Super
filter.
dubby,
Yeah, it was.
echoey.
Yeah, it was super super cool. I love that. Yeah, I liked a lot of the songs on here.
Did you kind of, speaking of Thunderdome, that kind of had that, America,
Yes.
decaying vibe,
Mhm.
and I think that's what the album kind of had
Yeah.
in general. Did you like the theme? Did you think it themed well?
Yeah, I thought it themed well. I will say though that it's kind of odd when you have an album that instrumentally, right, sounds light and happy and summery, but the lyrical content is a bit sort of doom and gloom and nihilistic.
Yeah.
So that juxtaposition, I mean, some people like it, some people don't. There were moments where I thought it really worked well. There were other moments where I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I get this, but there was quite a bit of doom and gloom on there for such a happy sounding record.
Doom and gloom happy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the big single on here, Dummy, which is
That's the single?
yeah, definitely, yeah. I do not like that song. I loved it. I liked it. It was danceable. I had
Yeah, I
that
liked it
like
too.
the vocal interlude in it, and
Okay.
the end of the world, like dancing to the end of the world thing was going on. That song particularly kind of reminded me of like early like Demon Days Gorillas with like the kids singing in the
Yeah.
choruses.
Don't.
Yes,
all that kind of
very reminiscent of that. But I like Dummy. Did you not like Dummy? Please tell me why.
stuff. Well, it's
Get
kind
real
of
with. Let's hear
it's
it.
kind of like some of my least favorite songs on this album. It's that like almost like too sing-songy, like the 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5, 6, 7. I just was like, this is too much like an iPhone commercial. It's too much like a Gap commercial. It's too much like. It seemed super
didn't it
calculated, like
get-
trying. I don't know.
Alex, can you
Yeah.
pick it up? I think that song "Dummy" did get picked up by a national corporation. If you could look that up for me, please.
It seemed
Yeah.
like a band of like corporate type songwriters. I don't know. It's just like some songs
That
were
song
like
did-
devoid of soul for me. That was one of them where I
Okay.
was like, this is an empty vessel.
Oh, okay.
Um,
See,
but-
because I like that. I like the juxtaposition of. I
Yeah.
liked where that worked for me because I
Yeah.
had like the doomy lyrics, but it was like really like sing-songy and like getting
Yeah.
down.
Right, but that because it's so catchy. Like almost this whole album is very catchy, very like oh cool. But then like as soon as it's over for me, it's like nothing. That didn't stay with me.
Oh, see, Dummy stays.
Only a
with-
couple songs stayed with me.
Dummy
Nice.
stays with me. Yes, please.
Yes, Dummy was my favorite song off the album. That song was picked up by Taco Bell
That's
for their
what it
late night commercials.
Bung.
Presented by Taco Bell.
Finally, we have something presented by Taco Bell.
Yes.
So my favorite song was, or one of my favorite songs, the song I assumed was going to be the single was Grim Generation, which is very much like kind of the retread, if you will, of Feel It Still, their previous single. And it kind of reminded me of like Pumped Up Kicks by Foster the People, where it's that, doom and gloom, but it's like sunshiny, whistly type of song that's like super poppy but strange.
Did you like on that song particularly like the Rip on the De La Soul
Dubrata.
intro?
The
Yes.
Motown drum fill.
The 3 is the magic number. The 1, 2, and the Hoodsie. It's the
It's
owl.
the
from
owl from the Tootsie
Pop commercial.
commercials.
I thought that was a play on the intro for 3 is a magic number by De La Soul.
That's what I got. When I heard it, I was like, oh, this is the... And I
Well,
beat him real quick, and I was like,
yeah.
oh, this is very
I know it
similar,
kicks
yeah.
off with that Motown drum fill, but
Yeah,
that's all I noticed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the owl from the Tootsie Pop commercial,
okay.
counting to 3, which
Yeah.
I particularly.
I know. I picked up on that was the first thing I heard. I was like, oh, it's the Tootsie Pop owl.
Yeah, it's just this album is like Funhouse Mirrors to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Because musically, like I do love so much of the like the production, the sounds, and like what they're going for. But then afterwards, I'm like, is this empty calories?
see,
Like I don't really.
For me, like the empty some of the stuff I thought was like more empty calorie on here
Yeah.
was Ghost Town, which is if you watch this podcast, I really don't like rewrites of huge like giant like
Yeah.
songs. And Ghost Town by the Specials is like This is
Oh, okay.
literally a rewrite of Ghost Town by the Specials.
I don't know that song.
me neither.
Living in a ghost town. If you heard it, you probably know it. It's in Shaun of the Dead. It's a really big second wave ska song. This sounds like a really big rewrite of that for me, along with the Stones' last single, which is, I believe, also titled Ghost Town, which is, all three of those songs have the same vibe. I don't like that. So that seems like empty to me. And then Times of Fantasy and Doubt, those seemed like the same song to me with different lyrical content.
Right, they're an A-B.
One of them was like one kind of ballad, like a more like bandy
Yeah.
ballad, and then the other one was more of like a piano ballad. And I didn't mind them like really at all, but together they all mush together.
Well,
because
they kind of, I found those two was weird too, because it kind of contradicts itself. Because like in Times of Fantasy, it ends with the lyric like, "I got a feeling that things are gonna be just fine," and then Doubt comes in and he's just like, "Life is a dead end," and you're like, "Wait a minute, I thought you just said that everything was gonna be fine."
They do that multiple times on the
Right,
album.
but that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing. But I think those A beat is like the most like clear, like one is crashing into another where you're like, whoa. But I enjoyed the song Doubt. I like it.
I wrote it's a light version of Queen's "Show Must Go On."
yes.
It's
right. Yeah.
It's so similar to that.
Yeah. There's a lot of that sort of Dan Arbach distorted vocal thing going on where I was like, oh, I hear Black Keys here, or oh, I hear Black Keys there.
That's
or,
why
oh,
I heard
hear
Broken Bells. He sounds so much like this.
Right,
James
yeah.
Mercer in that
And
group.
the vocal effect on like a Gnarls Barkley record,
right.
that's where I was just like, this sounds, and I was trying to place it, and I was like, oh, that, I was like, that's what that sounds like to me.
What?
High point?
Oh, the high point of the record
For
What?
me-
What? Absolute high point.
is Champ.
I like
With
Champ's the high
Edgar
point.
Winter.
With his vocals in the middle? That's absolute high point of the
Yeah,
album.
I love it.
High point of this
I was
record.
so happy when I heard that song. I'm like, man, I wonder what the Edgar
I'm like,
Winter
what,
song sounds
what
like.
Jamaican guy is singing right now? Like, I couldn't place where the voice was from.
Yeah, so
Very
Champ, the second to last song featuring rock and roll hero Edgar Winter and known Scientologist.
Have some respect.
Just letting everyone know. But that song for me was the highlight of the record because it kind of did what the Portugal the Man thing was doing, but it had that great like interlude in the middle with with Edgar Winter coming in, and Edgar Winter kind of sounds like a sad planet Earth, kind of like
Well, it's a Thetan.
yes,
Luke.
you know, like
Xenu.
begging for like the Earth, you know, to be like better again and like the world and America and all that stuff. But that song for me just was like Edgar Winter really blew it out of the water, and I didn't think he could sing as well as like he can.
Yeah.
And it sounded really great. I want to know how that came about. It's such a strange feature, but one of the highlights of the whole. It's the highlight of the record.
And it breaks into that like activism chanting
Yeah.
about like borders and stuff like that.
Oh
and then
my-
all of a sudden,
For the last minute.
it's
yeah.
like this crazy like heavy metal guitar. I'm thinking.
But then it gets beautiful again.
Yeah,
It gets
no,
like
that's so
arpeggiated.
confusing.
Okay,
This
so-
arpeggiating thing, and there's like a jazz saxophone
Yeah.
solo. You're like, what the
This
fuck
is-
is going on?
This
right
is what I kind of took from that. I think that they were kind of like trying to take like that form of like protest music that I think they were trying to like aim for with this album, and then with that song they were just filtering the other kinds of like more obvious music
Yeah.
and then not obvious music, and it was like a sound collage of ebb and flow of what Champ is about like normally. But I thought that sound collage, it was the sound collage was interesting. It was like a little, you know, because
Yeah,
it was
very
like that
interesting.
hardcore show, then the sax solo, a really great last song.
I like that one too. The last Anxiety, Clarity.
Me too, because I loved Paul Williams on there. Like
From Daft Punk's
Right.
Muppets on Broadway track, Touch, off of Random Access Memories.
and I just thought that was really, really great because it gave like that kind of spoken wordy vibe, and it really like summed up the record really well. And it had like the vibes that I really loved on like the first like 4 to 5 songs on this record that I thought were really great. And they just really ended really great with me.
And a
with
song
Anxiety.
that's kind of like in a 7/4, like a 3/4 to 4/4 feel. Like it's almost reggae kind of guitar, like offbeat stabs. And then halfway through, it switches completely and it goes to the Paul Williams doing spoken word. They bring back the intro track and they like reprise the first track of the album. It ends with this like triumphant kind of like synth lead and drum fills and organ, kind of like amen type of thing at the end. A strange record, but I think like very purposely strange, like almost calculatedly strange. Like, I don't know what audience this is for, but also like I think about bands that I'm just like not into, where I'll listen to a track. I'm like, well, that's a really well made, like earwormy track. But like the band AJR is one. The band Imagine Dragons is another one. Like these bands that the music like is good, but there's something like I don't know that I just don't connect to personally. Maybe.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I really like this, but you're right that there's like a kind of an element of like wanting to grab me and like be like, well, what else is going on here? And I'm just like, that was cool.
Yeah.
That's more how I feel. Like
Yeah.
that was cool and I liked it. You know, lost me a bit in the middle, but for you know what I mean?
And my favorite tracks were the ones that took the like kind of structural risks, like the last two songs, because a lot of this album, I'm like, I really love that like kind of double tracked, almost like delayed vocals with the distortion, that 60s transistor thing, that like Motown drums. But I'm like, yo, like 8 songs in a row kind of sounds so similar to me. Like the
Yeah.
instrumentation was so of one that it was like distractingly, like I couldn't pick each song apart.
Yeah, there wasn't enough variety in there. There was,
and I
yeah.
like the sound, but
Yeah.
I wish
Yeah.
more chances were taken.
But I mean, you blink and it's over though. It's only 35 minutes,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
just over 34 minutes long, less than 35 minutes long. So I think, overall, I mean, how do you guys feel if we're gonna rate this? Then how
All
are
right.
you guys feeling on the ratings?
I'll kick off a rating here. I'm gonna go that this was a like 6.7 for me because it was very listenable, short. Like I said, lost me a bit in the middle, but strong ender with Edgar Winter. So
Yeah.
6.7. It's a very listenable record, groovy, great, non-offensive, and had some cool stuff to offer. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I'll bump it up. I'll give it a 7. I think it's a solid 7. I enjoyed like the summer vibes. I feel like this is a record that you can just kind of like put on and just enjoy if you're doing like a fire or a barbecue or something. Like nobody's gonna be like, ugh. But it still has, you know, that track "Champ" on there. So if you're listening, you know, somebody might be like, "Whoa, what the hell was that?" You know, that kind of thing. But overall, I think front to back, yeah, it's a listenable record. So 7 for me.
I'm gonna give it a 6.5. I think it's well made. I think it has a lot of good stuff on it. I just didn't personally connect to it that much. It's kind of like the absolute definition of like good background music to me because I could put this on and not want to turn it off, but really I would go back and like revisit 3 to 5 of the songs.
Right on. Well, let us know what you think in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are we wrong? Are we right?
Is
Let us know.
Taco Bell delicious?
Is Taco Bell delicious? The answer is yes. Baja Blast, sponsor this podcast. Until next week, guys, this has been Get in the Garage. We'll see you next week.